You are not here by accident. Something within you, deeper than conscious awareness, more ancient than any choice you have ever deliberately made, directed you to this precise moment. And by the time you have absorbed everything shared here, you will begin to understand exactly why that happened. Perhaps lately you have been sensing something you cannot fully articulate. Not ordinary restlessness, not the usual discomfort of a difficult week. Something quieter and more persistent than that. A low, steady signal beneath the noise of your daily life, telling you that you are capable of something far greater than what you are currently producing. That the version of yourself you have been settling for is not the version you were built to become. That somewhere between where you are and where you know you could be, there is a gap, and that gap has been widening for longer than you want to admit. But what if that feeling, that quiet, persistent, sometimes uncomfortable sense that more is possible, is not self-criticism or unrealistic expectation? What if it is your deeper intelligence already communicating to you that the transformation you have been sensing is not only possible, but genuinely within reach? Most people dismiss that signal. They call it wishful thinking. They bury it under distraction, under comparison, under the comfortable routine of staying exactly who they have always been. They scroll past their own potential every single day without realizing it. But not you. You are here. You pressed play. You chose this moment over 1,000 other options. And that already means something significant. Today, at Elite Success Audiobooks, we are going to walk you through the 8 precise and deeply practical principles of what it truly means to focus on yourself for 6 months, and specifically what becomes possible in your body, your mind, your habits, your skill level, and your entire self-perception when you apply these principles with consistency, intention, and the kind of quiet discipline that most people never develop. If even one of these 8 principles reaches you today, your next 6 months could look entirely different from your last 6. And if all 8 take root, the version of yourself waiting on the other side of this audio may genuinely surprise you. You do not need years to alter your life. You need 6 concentrated months. 6 months of selecting growth over approval. 6 months of discipline over distraction. 6 months of silence over noise. Most people never grant themselves that. They attempt to improve while remaining visible. They desire transformation without withdrawing. They want outcomes while continuing to scroll, continuing to explain, continuing to react. And that is precisely why nothing shifts. Genuine change demands distance. Distance from validation, distance from comparison, distance from the relentless need to demonstrate something to the world. Because the reality is straightforward. If you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, deeply, deliberately, relentlessly, you will astonish everyone around you. Not because you attempted to impress them, but because you ceased trying to. Right now, most people are existing externally. They gauge their advancement by likes. They assess their worth by attention. They measure their accomplishment by how visible they are. But genuine growth does not occur in public. It unfolds in silence. It happens when nobody is applauding, when nobody is observing, when nobody believes anything meaningful is taking place. 6 months is sufficient to reconstruct your body, sufficient to sharpen your intellect, sufficient to cultivate a capability that separates you from average. But only if those 6 months are genuinely concentrated, not partially concentrated, not motivated for a week and scattered for 3, not engaging only when it feels comfortable, concentrated. If you dedicated 2 undivided hours each day to one meaningful objective, that amounts to over 360 hours across 6 months. That is not motivation. That is momentum. That is an identity shift. And identity shifts are the only changes that last. Because when you change behavior without changing identity, the behavior eventually reverts. But when your identity shifts, when you stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to be disciplined and start seeing yourself as someone who simply is disciplined, the behavior follows naturally, automatically, and without constant effort. Most people underestimate what 6 months can accomplish because they have never experienced 6 months of authentic consistency. They have experienced surges. They have experienced excitement. They have experienced temporary discipline. But they have never experienced sustained focus. And that is the distinction. While they are discussing what they intend to do, you are constructing. While they are announcing objectives, you are executing. While they are debating, comparing, reacting, you are progressing quietly. This is not about becoming consumed by effort. It is about becoming aligned with growth. It is not about withdrawing from the world entirely. It is about withdrawing from what distracts you. There is a meaningful difference. And that difference becomes more apparent with every passing week of genuine focus. 6 months of intentional concentration means you safeguard your time, you regulate your emotions, you fortify your body, you elevate your thinking, you complete what you initiate, you construct something that compounds. And when you do that long enough, something profound occurs. You stop requiring validation. You stop justifying yourself. You stop reacting to every comment, every opinion, every comparison, because you are too occupied building. And here is what most people fail to realize. The shock does not emerge from sudden success. It emerges from visible consistency. People are astonished not because you became fortunate. They are astonished because you became disciplined. They are astonished because you withdrew long enough to be transformed. 6 months from now, if you remain distracted, nothing shifts. 6 months from now, if you remain reactive, nothing shifts. But 6 months from now, if you commit to focused advancement daily, quietly, deliberately, your standards rise, your body changes, your confidence transforms, your capability level changes, your mindset evolves. And when your standards rise, your environment begins to reorganize. You no longer tolerate mediocrity.
You no longer tolerate excuses. You no longer tolerate the version of yourself that used to settle. That is when people begin saying you have changed. And they are correct. You have. But the genuine victory is not astonishing them. It is recognizing yourself in the mirror and knowing you constructed this. Not overnight, not by chance, not because someone rescued you. Because you chose to concentrate for 6 months. This audiobook is not about motivation. It is about direction. Over the next hour, we are going to break down precisely what focusing on yourself for 6 months truly means, mentally, physically, emotionally, and strategically. Not theory, not hype, structure. Because you do not need more inspiration. You need a plan. 6 months from today, you can still be explaining why things have not worked. Or you can be unrecognizable. The choice commences right now. Stop performing. Begin transforming. Chapter 1. Disappear from distraction. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, the first action you must take is to disappear. Not from your responsibilities, not from your objectives, but from distraction. Because distraction is the genuine adversary of transformation. Most people do not fail because they lack talent. They fail because their attention is perpetually fragmented. Every notification, every message, every trending topic, every comparison, your focus is being auctioned every single day, and most people surrender it without charge. You cannot rebuild yourself while continuously consuming everyone else's life. You cannot sharpen your edge while submerged in noise. You cannot establish a new identity while nourishing the old one every single hour. Withdrawing is not weakness. It is strategy. When you disappear from distraction, 3 things begin to emerge. First, your thoughts become clearer. Second, your standards become visible. Third, your time becomes yours once more. Right now, your attention is fragmented. Fragmented attention produces fragmented results. You work, but you monitor your phone. You read, but you switch tabs. You plan, but you respond to messages. That is not focus. That is scattered effort. And scattered effort never compounds. 6 months of scattered effort resembles nothing. 6 months of concentrated effort resembles reinvention. The distinction is not talent. It is
protection. You must guard your focus as though your future depends on it, because it genuinely does. Consider this. If you eliminated just 3 distractions from your daily life, 3 things that quietly consume your time, how much space would that generate? For most people, it is excessive social media. For others, it is persistent group conversations. For some, it is news cycles, gossip, comparison. None of these are malicious in themselves, but all of them are costly. They drain clarity. They drain depth. They drain momentum. When you decide to concentrate on yourself for 6 months, you must become selective. Selective about what enters your mind. Selective about who has access to your time. selective about where your energy flows. This selectivity is not selfishness. It is precision. The most effective people in any field are not those who give their attention to everyone and everything equally. They are those who learned to direct their most valuable resource, their focused attention, toward what genuinely matters. Here is the uncomfortable reality. If everyone can reach you at any moment, you will never construct anything exceptional. Rare skill demands rare focus, and rare focus demands boundaries. There was a period in my life when I believed that being constantly reachable meant being responsible. I responded rapidly. I appeared everywhere. I answered everything. I felt productive, but I was not advancing. My days were occupied, yet my results were hollow. It was not until I began intentionally switching things off, not permanently, just deliberately, that I sensed momentum returning. Silence generated space. Space generated depth. Depth generated improvement. And improvement generated confidence. When you withdraw from distraction, you stop performing your existence and begin constructing it. Performance is external. Construction is internal. Performance seeks visibility. Construction seeks progress. You cannot optimize both simultaneously. For the next 6 months, select construction. That means establishing concentrated blocks in your day that are sacred. No phone, no open tabs, no interruptions. Even 2 hours of undisturbed focus daily can redirect your trajectory. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will crave stimulation. You will experience the impulse to check something, to see something, to respond to something. That impulse is an addiction to distraction. And like any addiction, it diminishes when you resist it consistently. Discipline is not dramatic. It is quiet refusal. Refusal to react. Refusal to satisfy every impulse. Refusal to exchange long-term growth for short-term stimulation. The person you are working to become does not need to know everything that is happening online. That person needs to know what they are building, and they need the uninterrupted hours to build it. Most people fear withdrawing because they believe they will be forgotten. But being perpetually visible without growth is more damaging. It traps you in a stagnant identity. If people always observe the same version of you, they anticipate the same version of you. Withdrawing grants you permission to evolve. It grants you the space to become something they have not seen before, something that only becomes visible after months of invisible work. 6 months is sufficient for physical change, sufficient for mental clarity, sufficient for capability development, but only if you reduce input. You cannot construct a stronger intellect while feeding it endless noise. You cannot sharpen your thinking while consuming shallow content for hours. You cannot deepen your expertise while perpetually interrupting yourself. Every interruption resets momentum. Every reset costs time. And across months, those small resets accumulate into massive delays. While others are refreshing timelines, you are refining yourself.
While they react, you rehearse. While they scroll, you study. This is not about isolation. It is about intention. You do not need to eliminate the world. You need to schedule the world. There is a meaningful difference. Designate specific windows for communication. Designate specific windows for consumption. And protect your creation time as though it is non-negotiable. Because it is. In 6 months, nobody will recall how rapidly you replied to messages, but they will observe if you have been transformed. They will observe if your body is stronger. They
will observe if your confidence is steadier. They will observe if your expertise has quietly doubled. And they will wonder when it occurred. It occurred when you withdrew. It happened when you ceased announcing. It happened when you concluded that attention was less valuable than advancement. Distraction appears harmless in the immediate moment, but across time it erodes potential. Focus feels demanding in the immediate moment, but across time it accumulates power. You are not lacking ability. You are leaking attention. Seal the leaks. Guard your hours. Protect your mind. Withdraw from distraction. Not permanently, but long enough to rebuild. Because if you genuinely want to astonish everyone in 6 months, the first move is uncomplicated. Stop being everywhere. Begin being intentional. And observe what unfolds when your energy finally has one direction. Now, before we move forward, if what you have heard so far has already shifted something in your perspective, consider leaving the number 111 in the comments below. In quantum field principles, 111 is recognized as a signal of new beginnings, of mental alignment, of a mind beginning to open to new patterns. If you are feeling that alignment right now, that quiet recognition that something is about to change, let 111 mark this moment for you. And let this community witness the point at which you chose intention over distraction. Chapter 2. Reclaim 180 Days. 6 months sounds brief when you say it quickly, but 6 months is nearly 180 days, and 180 days used with deliberate intention is enough to alter your trajectory permanently. The difficulty is not that people lack time. The difficulty is that they do not own their time. They react to it. They drift through it. They spend it unconsciously. Then they announce, "I have been busy." Being occupied is not identical to being productive. Being engaged is not identical to advancing. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, you must reclaim your days. All 180 of them. Right now, your life is shaped by how you utilize your hours. Not your intentions, not your ambitions, your hours. 2 concentrated hours each day across 180 days equals 360 hours. 3 hours each day equals 540 hours. That is equivalent to months of deep practice, months of deliberate capability building, months of physical conditioning, months of studying, constructing, refining. And the remarkable truth is that most people have these hours already available to them. They simply have not yet chosen to redirect them. Most people fail to appreciate how transformative this is because they have never directed time consistently toward one purpose. They scatter it. One week they are motivated. The following week they are distracted. Then they restart. Momentum dissolves in inconsistency. Time only compounds when it is protected. Examine your average day honestly. How much of it is intentional? How much of it is reactive? You wake and check your phone. You respond before you think. You consume before you create. Your energy is expended before your objectives even receive attention. Reclaiming 180 days begins with reclaiming your mornings. The initial hour of your day establishes the psychological tone for everything that follows. If your first action is reaction, responding to someone else's agenda before establishing your own, you have already surrendered the most valuable mental resource you possess. The clarity that exists in the early hours, before the demands of the day begin to accumulate, is irreplaceable. And most people give it away without a second thought. But if your first action is creation, reading, training, planning, building, you establish authority over your time. And authority generates confidence. Not the kind of confidence that requires external validation, the quiet, internal kind that comes from knowing you started your day on your own terms. There was an individual I once encountered who felt stagnant in his career for years. He believed he required a new opportunity, a new organization, a new environment, a new supervisor. But when he examined his daily schedule with honesty, he recognized something uncomfortable. He had 2 unstructured hours every evening. 2 hours that dissolved into television, scrolling, and passive consumption. He resolved to allocate those 2 hours differently. Every single weekday across 6 months, he studied a new technical discipline. No declarations, no dramatic lifestyle reinvention, no social media updates, just 2 quiet hours of deliberate practice. At first, nothing shifted. After 1 month, nothing visible changed. After 3 months, he sensed himself becoming sharper. After 6 months, he had cultivated enough competence to qualify for positions he had previously considered beyond his reach. His external circumstances changed because his internal investment changed. Not overnight, across 180 days, 2 hours at a time. This is not an exceptional story. This is what structured time does when it is directed consistently. You do not require extreme measures. You require structured repetition. Reclaiming your time means auditing it. Monitor your day for 1 week. Where does it leak? How many micro-interruptions occur? How many times do you change tasks? Each change costs energy. Each interruption delays mastery. Most people never experience depth because they never remain in one cognitive lane long enough. The irony is that many people feel exhausted at the end of a day during which they accomplished very little of substance, because shallow, fragmented activity is mentally depleting without being productive. Deep work constructs identity. Shallow activity constructs exhaustion. If you commit to concentrating on yourself for 6 months, structure becomes your partner. Decide in advance. What expertise will you develop? What physical objective will you pursue? What mental discipline will you cultivate? Then designate hours for it. Non-negotiable hours. Treat those hours with the same seriousness you would give to a commitment made to someone you deeply respect. Because that is precisely what they are, a commitment to your future self. Think of your future self as someone to whom you are accountable. If you were investing in someone to improve your life, would you permit them to waste half their time scrolling? Then cease permitting yourself to do it. Another essential element of reclaiming 180 days is reducing decision fatigue. Plan your weeks. Plan your training sessions. Plan your study blocks. When decisions are automated, execution becomes more fluid. Most people exhaust energy deciding whether to work. Disciplined people conserve energy for the actual work. The distinction is significant. One group arrives at their most important work already depleted. The other arrives ready. 6 months of scattered decision-making feels chaotic. 6 months of structured routine feels empowering. Structure is not confinement. It is liberation from randomness. And randomness is the adversary of transformation. Envision it clearly. 6 months from now, if you maintain your current patterns, what changes? Likely very little. But if you invest just 2 or 3 concentrated hours daily in one meaningful direction, what becomes achievable? New physical composition, new competence level, new financial opportunity, new self-perception. Time is neutral. It does not reward potential. It rewards consistency. Many people believe they require motivation to remain consistent. They do not. They require clarity. Clarity about why these 180 days are significant. Clarity about what they are constructing. Clarity about who they intend to become. When clarity is strong, excuses diminish. And when excuses diminish, growth accelerates. Motivation is weather. It changes without warning. Clarity is a compass. It functions regardless of conditions. Here is something most people misunderstand. You do not need to maximize every hour. You need to protect specific hours. Attempting to optimize your entire day leads to burnout. Protecting 2 or 3 sacred hours generates progress without exhaustion. Consistency over intensity. That is how time accumulates power. When you protect 180 days, something subtle occurs. Your identity transitions from someone who attempts to someone who executes. And once that shift happens, confidence rises naturally. Not because you feel inspired, but because you have evidence. Evidence that you appear. Evidence that you complete. Evidence that you construct. In 6 months, people may attribute your progress to fortune. They may suggest circumstances worked out for you. They did not witness the 180 early mornings. They did not observe the concentrated evenings. They did not see the repetitions. But you did. And that is sufficient. Reclaiming 180 days is not glamorous. It is repetitive. It is quiet. It is disciplined. But repetition cultivates expertise. Expertise cultivates leverage. Leverage cultivates freedom. If you want to astonish everyone, do not aim for dramatic transformation. Aim for governed days. Own your mornings. Guard your concentration blocks. Eliminate unnecessary time leaks. Repeat across 180 days. That is the complete formula. No shortcuts, no reinvention every week, just structured, protected time directed toward one purpose. Because 6 months of protected time accomplishes something remarkable. It removes excuses. And once excuses are removed, growth becomes unavoidable. Chapter 3. Strengthen your body first. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, strengthen your body. Not for aesthetics, not for approval, not for external recognition, but for identity. Your body is the most visible evidence of your discipline. It carries your habits. It reflects your standards. It reveals your consistency. You can misrepresent your plans. You can exaggerate your objectives. But you cannot fabricate physical discipline across time. The body communicates the truth. Many people attempt to reconstruct their mindset while neglecting their physiology. They consume books, they absorb content, they journal their aspirations, but they evade discomfort. And without discomfort, there is no genuine transformation. Physical training is controlled adversity. It teaches you to remain when you want to withdraw, to push when you want to surrender, to repeat when you feel depleted. That is not merely fitness. That is mental conditioning. Every session where you choose to show up when you do not want to is a rehearsal for every other difficult moment in your life. When you train your body consistently, something deeper occurs. You begin fulfilling promises to yourself. Every completed training session becomes internal evidence. Evidence that you appear. Evidence that you endure. Evidence that you do not abandon easily. And evidence constructs confidence more effectively than motivation ever could. Consider the psychology embedded within it. When you wake earlier than necessary to train, you initiate your day with a victory. When you select discipline over comfort, you reinforce identity. You cease perceiving yourself as someone who attempts. You begin perceiving yourself as someone who executes. That shift alters everything, not just in the gym, but in how you approach every other challenge throughout the day. Most people underestimate the influence of physical momentum. They regard it as separate from career advancement, separate from financial development, separate from emotional regulation. It is not separate. Your physiology shapes your psychology. When your posture becomes stronger, your presence transforms. When your energy levels rise, your concentration sharpens. When your endurance expands, your tolerance for pressure grows. Strength is not only muscular, it is resilience. There was a period when I struggled with inconsistency across every dimension of my existence. Projects initiated and abandoned. Objectives recorded and neglected. Motivation ascending and collapsing. But when I committed to training 4 days each week without exceptions, something unanticipated occurred. My discipline in other domains improved automatically. I became less reactive, more structured, more deliberate. Because training had established a foundation, it demonstrated that I could accomplish demanding things repeatedly. And repetition constructs character. 6 months of consistent physical training can fundamentally alter how you perceive yourself. Not because your appearance has changed, but because you know what you endured to arrive there. The discomfort, the early mornings, the sessions you did not feel like completing. Those moments construct identity. They accumulate quietly into a new self-image, one that says, "I am someone who shows up even when it is hard." If you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, establish a physical standard immediately. 4 training sessions each week, minimum. No extreme regimens, no burnout approaches. Consistency over intensity. Lift weights. Train bodyweight movements. Run. Condition. The specific method matters less than the commitment. What matters is repetition. You are not pursuing perfection. You are building reliability. Your body is a daily reminder of your commitment. If you disregard it, you weaken that reminder. If you fortify it, you reinforce discipline. Another transformative tool is controlled discomfort. Cold exposure. Extended walks without stimulation. Intentional periods of fasting. Structured endurance sessions. Not to punish yourself, but to expand your threshold. Every time you voluntarily select discomfort, you increase your capacity for pressure. And high capacity for pressure is a genuine competitive advantage. Most people collapse under pressure because they avoid pressure daily. You will not. You will encounter pressure with familiarity because you practice discomfort regularly. And here is something significant. Physical discipline improves emotional regulation. When you are physically conditioned, your nervous system becomes more stable. Your breathing steadies. Your heart rate adapts more efficiently. Your recovery accelerates. That translates into composed responses. Composure is power. People are astonished not only by visible transformation, they are astonished by composure. When you respond deliberately instead of reacting instantly, when you maintain posture instead of contracting, when your voice remains steady under tension, that presence is constructed through physical discipline. You cannot meditate yourself into resilience without also training your body. The two are inseparable. 6 months is sufficient to observe visible change, but more significantly, it is sufficient to feel different. You move differently. You stand differently. You think differently, because you possess evidence that you can endure. Most people wait to feel confident before they act. You construct confidence by acting repeatedly. Training is daily proof. Proof that you can manage discomfort. Proof that you can sustain effort. Proof that you can improve incrementally. And incremental improvement accumulates into transformation. If you train 4 times each week for 6 months, that represents over 100 sessions, over 100 deliberate acts of self-respect, over 100 moments where you chose the harder option. That is not insignificant. That is transformation. While others complain about energy levels, you cultivate yours. While others evade effort, you embrace it. While others discuss change, you embody it. This is not about developing an obsession with appearance. It is about becoming aligned with strength. Strength in posture, strength in routine, strength in mind. Your body becomes a symbol of standards. When you elevate your physical standards, your mental standards rise in parallel. You cease tolerating laziness. You cease negotiating with excuses. You cease identifying with weakness. And once that identity transitions, other changes follow naturally. Improved nutrition, improved sleep, improved decision-making. Because discipline in one domain leaks into others, and the leak from physical consistency is one of the most powerful transfers available to you. 6 months from now, if you train with consistency, people will observe. But more significantly, you will observe. You will recognize the version of yourself who no longer abandons easily. The version who does not collapse under pressure. The version who selects effort over comfort. That is the foundation. You cannot astonish everyone with words. You astonish them with visible evidence. And nothing is more visible than a physique shaped by discipline. So strengthen your body first. Not because it is fashionable, not because it generates admiration, but because it is among the most efficient pathways to rewriting identity. And identity is what genuinely transforms your existence. Train with consistency. Endure discomfort. Construct reliability. Because when your body becomes strong, your excuses become irrelevant. And when you have completed your first month of consistent training, when you have shown up on the days you wanted to stop, consider leaving the number 444 in the comments below. In many traditions of quantum awareness and numerological study, 444 is associated with stability, with laying foundations that last, with the energy of a structure being built that will not easily be shaken. If you have felt that solidity beginning to form within you, that quiet shift from someone who tries to someone who shows up, let 444 represent that moment. Leave it below and let others in this community see where you are. Chapter 4. Upgrade your mind daily. If fortifying your body constructs visible discipline, upgrading your mind constructs invisible power. And invisible power is what distinguishes short-term change from permanent transformation. Most people consume information every day, but very few intentionally develop their thinking. There is a fundamental distinction. Consumption is passive. Development is deliberate. You can scroll for hours and feel mentally occupied. But occupation is not advancement. Feeling busy and actually developing are two entirely different experiences. And most people have spent years confusing one for the other. If you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, you must become intentional about what enters your mind. Because your mind is the central mechanism. It shapes your decisions. It filters your emotions. It determines your standards. And most people permit it to be programmed randomly. News feeds, opinions, arguments, trends, perpetual input, very little reflection. When your input is chaotic, your output becomes confused. Clarity requires filtration. For the next 6 months, reduce mental noise. That means limiting shallow content, limiting outrage-driven media, limiting constant commentary. Not because you are evading reality, but because you are protecting depth. Depth requires silence. It requires uninterrupted contemplation. It requires sustained concentration on one concept long enough to genuinely comprehend it. Most ideas that could transform your life require more than a 30-second video to understand. They require sitting with them, returning to them, testing them against your actual experience. Most people never remain with an idea long enough to master it. They skim, they react, they advance to the next thing, and consequently, their thinking remains surface level. Surface level thinking produces average decisions. Average decisions produce predictable lives. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, elevate your thinking quality. Begin with daily reading, not arbitrary reading, targeted reading. Select topics aligned with who you intend to become. Capability development, psychology, strategy, finance, philosophy. 1 chapter each day, even 10 pages daily, compounds. 6 months of daily reading can equal 10 to 15 substantial books. That is not merely knowledge. That is a perspective shift. That is a mind that begins to see patterns others miss, possibilities others dismiss, and solutions others walk past entirely. But reading alone is insufficient. You must reflect. After reading, inquire. What did I absorb? How does this apply to my circumstances? What action does this demand? Information without integration becomes clutter. Integration constructs leverage. Another powerful discipline is writing. Writing enforces clarity. When you write, vague thoughts become structured concepts. Confusion becomes visible, and visible confusion can be addressed. Many people believe they require superior ideas. They do not. They require clearer thinking, and clarity is trained. 10 minutes of journaling each day can dramatically increase self-awareness. Not emotional ventilation, strategic reflection. What functioned effectively today? What consumed time wastefully? What decision could I refine? 6 months of reflection constructs self-knowledge. Self-knowledge constructs control. Control constructs confidence. And confidence built on genuine self-knowledge is extraordinarily stable, because it does not depend on external conditions remaining favorable. There was a period when I felt mentally overwhelmed. Too many concepts, too many objectives, too many distractions. I was not lacking ambition. I was lacking structure. When I began writing daily, even briefly, something transformed. My thinking decelerated. My priorities became apparent. My decisions became sharper. Because I was no longer thinking reactively. I was thinking deliberately. The act of writing forced me to slow down enough to actually understand what I was thinking, and to realize how much of my mental activity was noise rather than signal. Upgrading your mind also means upgrading your environment. Who do you listen to? Who shapes your thinking? If you surround yourself, even digitally, with mediocrity, your standards gradually adjust downward. If you surround yourself with excellence, your expectations rise. Select inputs that challenge you. Select content that extends your comprehension. Select conversations that elevate thinking. This does not mean withdrawing socially. It means curating influence. Your mind is shaped by repetition. Repeated thoughts become beliefs. Repeated beliefs become behaviors. Repeated behaviors become identity. If you repeat shallow inputs, you construct a shallow identity. If you repeat disciplined inputs, you construct a disciplined identity. Another critical transition is replacing passive consumption with active creation. Instead of always observing, begin constructing. Instead of always listening, begin applying. Instead of always absorbing, begin producing. Creation deepens comprehension. When you attempt to explain something, you discover where your gaps reside. When you attempt to construct something, you identify where your vulnerabilities lie. And those vulnerabilities become targets for advancement. 6 months of daily mental elevation creates a new cognitive baseline. You become less reactive, less easily influenced, less distracted by noise. Because your thinking is anchored. Anchored thinking produces composed decisions. Composed decisions produce powerful results. Many people believe upgrading the mind means accumulating more information. It does not. It means improving decision quality. Better decisions about time. Better decisions about effort. Better decisions about relationships. If your decisions improve by even a modest percentage daily across 6 months, your trajectory shifts substantially. And here is something subtle but significant. When your thinking deepens, your conversations transform. You communicate more precisely. You listen more attentively. You respond more thoughtfully. That composure astonishes people. Not because you are louder, but because you are clearer. Clarity is uncommon. In a distracted world, deep thinkers stand out conspicuously, not because they demand attention, but because the quality of their thinking is impossible to ignore. If you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, dedicate daily time to mental development. Protect it. No multitasking, no divided attention. Even 1 hour each day of deliberate study and reflection can expand your cognitive capacity in ways that compound across time. While others debate surface-level topics, you are constructing frameworks. While others consume entertainment endlessly, you are cultivating insight. While others react emotionally, you are fortifying reasoning. The mind you construct in private determines the life you inhabit in public. And when 6 months have elapsed, the distinction will not only be apparent in your physique or your accomplishments, it will be apparent in your thinking, sharper, calmer, more strategic. That is the power of upgrading your mind daily. Not dramatic, not conspicuous, but transformational. Because when your thinking improves, everything else follows. Chapter 5. Finish what you start. Most people do not lack ambition. They lack completion. They initiate with enthusiasm. They commence with motivation. They declare with confidence. But they rarely conclude. And nothing erodes self-trust more rapidly than unfinished commitments. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, become someone who finishes. Not someone who attempts, not someone who plans, not someone who announces, someone who completes. There is a psychological transition that occurs when you consistently finish what you begin. Every concluded task becomes internal evidence. Evidence that you are dependable. Evidence that your words carry meaning. Evidence that you follow through. And self-trust is more powerful than any external recognition. Consider how many things you have initiated across the years. Training programs, courses, projects, habits, ideas. Now ask yourself honestly, how many did you actually finish? Unfinished actions generate mental weight. They occupy the background of your consciousness, gradually depleting confidence. Every time you recall them, you experience a subtle reminder, I did not follow through. Multiply that across years. That is how people gradually lose belief in themselves. Not from failure, from inconsistency. Finishing constructs identity. When you complete something demanding, you reinforce a powerful internal message. I am someone who executes. That message shifts posture. It changes tone. It transforms energy. Because now you are not hoping to become disciplined. You possess proof. For the next 6 months, simplify your concentration. Pursue fewer things. Complete everything. The challenge is not that people aim insufficiently high. The challenge is that they aim in too many simultaneous directions. Scattered ambition produces unfinished advancement. Select one primary physical objective. Select one primary expertise. Select one structured mental discipline. And commit to completing the full cycle. If it is a 12-week training program, complete all 12 weeks. If it is a certification course, finish it entirely. If it is a 30-day habit challenge, complete all 30 days without exception. Completion constructs momentum. Momentum constructs confidence. Confidence constructs consistency. Many people chase novelty. They become disengaged rapidly. They crave something new before mastering what is directly in front of them. But mastery is tedious in the beginning. It demands repetition. It requires remaining when the excitement has subsided. And that is precisely where most people depart. They mistake boredom for misalignment. It is not misalignment. It is growth. When you remain long enough, boredom transforms into expertise. Expertise transforms into leverage. Leverage transforms into opportunity, but only if you stay. There was a period when I perpetually shifted direction. New objectives every few weeks, new approaches every month. I felt productive because I was always initiating something new, but my results remained shallow. The turning point arrived when I committed to one project for 6 months. No pivoting, no reinventing, just refinement. The first month was gradual. The second month felt repetitive. By the third month, patterns began improving. By the sixth month, the competence level had doubled. Not because I discovered something extraordinary, but because I did not abandon the process. Finishing is not glamorous. It is quiet discipline. It is declining the next appealing concept. It is resisting the impulse to begin again. It is remaining with the process long enough to extract its full value. It is the understanding that depth comes to those who stay, and that staying, in a world built on the expectation of novelty and stimulation, is itself a profound act of discipline. And if you want to astonish everyone, cease pursuing intensity. Pursue completion. Intensity impresses momentarily. Completion transforms permanently. Here is a powerful guideline for the next 6 months. No new major commitments until current ones are concluded. This enforces focus. It enforces depth. It compels you to confront the uncomfortable middle, because the middle is where genuine growth materializes. The beginning is stimulating. The conclusion is rewarding. The middle is demanding. And most people never navigate through the middle. They withdraw when advancement feels gradual. They withdraw when recognition is absent. They withdraw when effort outweighs applause. But if you remain, something transforms. You become stable, emotionally stable, mentally stable, strategically stable. You cease being driven by mood. You begin being driven by commitment. And commitment constructs identity. Another reason finishing carries such significance is that it generates visible transformation. Anyone can begin attending the gym. Very few complete 6 consistent months. Anyone can commence learning a skill. Very few reach genuine competence through sustained repetition. Anyone can devise a business concept. Very few develop it long enough to witness meaningful traction. When you finish, you enter a smaller category of individuals, the category of executors. And executors astonish people, not through words, through results. Finishing also refines your standards. You recognize what genuine effort demands. You comprehend timelines realistically. You respect the process. And that respect makes you calmer. You cease expecting instant results. You begin expecting earned advancement. 6 months from now, the distinction between you and others will not be intelligence. It will not be fortune. It will be completion rate. While others initiated 5 things and finished none, you completed 3 fully. While others pivoted perpetually, you refined patiently. While others abandoned at the first plateau, you persisted through the middle. Completion accumulates. One finished habit leads to another. One concluded objective strengthens belief for the next. Self-trust expands. And self-trust is powerful. Because when you trust yourself, hesitation diminishes. You decide more swiftly. You act more decisively. You recover more rapidly. If you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, protect your completion rate. Monitor it. Measure it. Take pride in it. Do not permit excitement to distract you from finishing. Do not permit boredom to drive you away from mastery. Remain, refine, complete. Because when 6 months have elapsed and people observe you, they will not perceive someone who attempted. They will perceive someone who followed through. And following through is exceptionally rare. Finish what you begin, every single time. That is how you construct a reputation with yourself. And once you construct that internal reputation, the external world will eventually take notice. Before we continue, if you are someone who has recognized yourself in this chapter, someone who knows they have left too many things unfinished, consider leaving the number 777 in the comments below. In the language of quantum resonance and numerological awareness, 777 is associated with alignment, with being on the correct path, with the moment a person transitions from scattered potential to focused execution. If that transition is occurring for you right now, if something in you is deciding to finish what it starts, let 777 represent that commitment. Leave it below. Let others witness your decision. Chapter 6. Control your emotions before they control you. You can protect your concentration. You can reclaim your time. You can fortify your body. You can elevate your mind. You can complete what you initiate. But if you cannot govern your emotions, all of it disintegrates under pressure. Emotional instability destroys long-term consistency, not because you lack ability, but because you react instead of respond. Most people do not fail from insufficient knowledge. They fail from unmanaged emotion. Frustration, comparison, impatience, ego, doubt. These emotions quietly undermine progress. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, construct emotional discipline, not emotional suppression. Discipline. There is a meaningful distinction. Suppression buries emotion. Discipline observes it. When you experience anger, most people react. They defend. They argue. They escalate. But emotional discipline pauses. It inquires, is this truly worth my energy? Every reaction consumes focus. Every conflict depletes momentum. Every emotional surge disrupts clarity. If you are reconstructing yourself, You cannot afford perpetual emotional leaks. You must conserve energy for growth. Consider the individuals who impress you most profoundly. Are they loud and reactive, or composed and deliberate? Composure communicates strength. It demonstrates control. It demonstrates internal stability. When you remain composed in circumstances where others lose control, people notice, because composure is uncommon. In a world where emotional reactivity has become normalized, where outrage is rewarded and restraint is undervalued, the person who remains steady under pressure stands apart immediately. Emotional regulation begins with awareness. Observe your triggers. What renders you defensive? What generates insecurity? What produces impatience? Instead of reacting immediately, construct a pause. 5 seconds. One deliberate breath. A conscious delay. That pause separates discipline from impulse. Impulse is immediate. Discipline is intentional. Across time, that pause becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. Another essential element of emotional regulation is detachment from external validation. If your emotional state depends on praise, you will crumble under criticism. If your motivation depends on encouragement, you will cease when ignored. When you concentrate on yourself for 6 months, detach from applause. Work without requiring recognition. Advance without requiring announcement. Allow results to speak eventually. This protects emotional stability because you are no longer performing. You are constructing. There was a period when criticism would derail my momentum for days. One comment, one doubt, one comparison, and suddenly my concentration was shattered, not because the criticism was powerful, but because I granted it power. When I began practicing emotional detachment, something shifted. I ceased reacting immediately. I permitted feedback to settle. I responded strategically rather than emotionally. That single adjustment increased productivity substantially because energy remained directed toward what mattered. Emotional discipline also means governing internal dialogue. The voice in your mind can either support growth or undermine it. Many people address themselves more harshly than anyone externally ever could. One error becomes identity. One setback becomes complete failure. But disciplined individuals correct without self-destruction. They communicate, "That approach was ineffective," rather than, "I am incapable." Language shapes perception. Perception shapes performance. If you desire 6 months of concentrated transformation, protect your internal narrative. Replace emotional exaggeration with objective evaluation. Not, "Everything is ruined," but, "That requires adjustment." Not, "I cannot accomplish this," but, "This demands refinement." Emotion amplifies. Discipline stabilizes. Another frequently overlooked dimension of emotional regulation is comparison. Comparison depletes clarity. When you perpetually measure your advancement against others, your timeline becomes distorted. You rush. You panic. You doubt. But when you measure against your previous self, progress becomes apparent. 6 months is about internal evolution, not competing with someone else's chapter. When you detach from comparison, your emotional state stabilizes, and stability constructs consistency. Pressure will arrive. Obstacles will materialize. Delays will create frustration. That is assured. What separates those who astonish everyone from those who fade away is emotional resilience. Resilience is not toughness. It is recovery velocity. How swiftly do you return to focus following a setback? How rapidly do you regain composure after criticism? How long do you dwell upon difficulties? The faster you recover, the stronger you become. If you spend 3 days emotionally affected by one challenge, you lose momentum. If you process it in 30 minutes and adjust your approach, you protect your trajectory. Emotional efficiency is power. Here is a simple standard for the next 6 months. No emotional decision-making during intense emotional states. If you are angry, do not decide. If you are excessively excited, do not commit. If you are discouraged, do not abandon. Wait. Stabilize. Then act. This single principle can prevent substantial errors that would otherwise cost you weeks of rebuilt momentum. People are astonished not merely by physical transformation, they are astonished by maturity, by composed responses, by steady presence, by the capacity to remain grounded when chaos surrounds them. That presence is constructed through daily emotional discipline. You train your body in the gym. You train your mind through study. You train your emotions through pause and reflection. All 3 dimensions matter. Without emotional regulation, discipline becomes fragile. With emotional regulation, discipline becomes sustainable. 6 months of emotional governance will transform how people experience you. You become less reactive, less dramatic, less easily unsettled, and more strategic, more concentrated, more composed. And composure under pressure is magnetic. It communicates power without noise. If you genuinely want to astonish everyone in 6 months, govern your emotions before they govern you. Because when your emotions cease dictating your behavior, your standards rise. And when your standards rise, your existence follows. Composure is power. Develop it. Chapter 7. Build a rare skill that pays. If you withdraw from distraction, if you reclaim your time, if you fortify your body, if you elevate your mind, if you govern your emotions, there is one additional layer that transforms everything. Construct a skill, not 10 skills, one. One rare, valuable, marketable skill. Because discipline without direction is wasted potential. Many people enhance themselves physically and mentally, but never channel that enhancement into something concrete. They become more motivated, but not more valuable. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, elevate your market value, not your online presence. Your competence. Competence commands respect. Competence generates opportunity. Competence constructs leverage. And competence is developed through depth. 6 months of scattered learning generates familiarity. 6 months of concentrated learning generates mastery. Select a skill aligned with your future. It could be writing, programming, sales, design, public speaking, trading, marketing, video editing, artificial intelligence tools, language fluency. The specific choice is secondary. What matters is commitment. Most people abandon before reaching competence. They practice until it becomes uncomfortable. They cease when they feel average. But competence materializes after discomfort, after repetition, after mistakes. If you dedicate 2 concentrated hours each day to one skill across 6 months, you will accumulate hundreds of hours of deliberate practice. That level of repetition transitions you from beginner to capable, from capable to competitive, from competitive to respected. And each of those transitions happens quietly, invisibly, until one day it becomes unmistakably visible to everyone around you. And when competence becomes visible, people are astonished. Not because you transformed suddenly, but because you developed quietly. There was a young individual who held an ordinary position and felt invisible in his field. He resolved to study digital marketing, not casually, but deliberately. Every weekday following his regular work, he studied and practiced for 2 hours. He constructed small projects. He tested campaigns. He analyzed data. For 3 months, nothing dramatic occurred. For 6 months, his comprehension deepened. By the conclusion of that period, he had cultivated sufficient competence to offer freelance services. Within a year, his income had approximately doubled. Not because of fortune, because of concentrated skill acquisition. He did not find a better opportunity. He built himself into someone for whom better opportunities became available. Skill surpasses hype. Skill surpasses motivation. Skill surpasses intention. In a distracted world, depth is uncommon, and uncommon things carry value. Developing a rare skill also sharpens identity. You cease perceiving yourself as attempting to improve. You begin perceiving yourself as someone who produces. Production constructs confidence more rapidly than affirmation ever could. When you can deliver measurable results, you no longer depend on encouragement. Your competence becomes your security. Another critical transition: cease learning endlessly without producing output. Apply immediately. If you learn writing, write daily. If you learn programming, construct projects. If you learn sales, practice conversations. Application accelerates development. Passive learning impedes it. 6 months of daily application will surpass years of occasional study. Because mastery is repetition under pressure, and pressure reveals gaps. When you encounter difficulty within your skill domain, you are compelled to improve. Improvement constructs leverage. Leverage constructs freedom. Many people pursue financial gain. Very few pursue skill development. Financial gain follows skill. Opportunity follows competence. Respect follows execution. And if you concentrate on yourself for 6 months and construct one rare skill, you expand your options. New employment opportunities, new income streams, new collaborations, new environments. People begin perceiving you differently, not because you communicate differently, but because you produce differently. And production transforms perception. There is another psychological advantage to developing skill. It anchors focus. When you know what you are constructing, distractions lose their appeal. Scrolling becomes less compelling. Drama becomes less relevant. Because your time has genuine value. When you treat your hours as investment into skill, you cease spending them carelessly. This generates discipline organically. Skill development also cultivates patience. You do not become exceptional overnight. You refine. You iterate. You correct. That repetition develops emotional resilience. You cease expecting instant results. You respect the process. And respecting the process diminishes frustration, which increases consistency, which accelerates growth. Everything is interconnected. By month 3, you will sense advancement. By month 6, others will observe it. By month 12, your circumstances may appear entirely transformed. But it commences with 6 disciplined months. Select wisely. Do not select what is fashionable. Select what aligns with your strengths and long-term direction. Then commit. No transitioning every week. No abandoning at the first plateau. Remain long enough to become formidable. Formidable in competence. Formidable in confidence. Formidable in independence. Because when you can generate value consistently, you cease pursuing validation. You cease requiring permission. You cease questioning your worth. Your skill communicates. And when skill communicates, it speaks with unmistakable clarity. While others engage in online debates, you are refining. While others lament the absence of opportunity, you are generating it. While others wish for superior outcomes, you are developing superior capability. Capability astonishes people, because capability alters results. And results are undeniable. If you genuinely want to astonish everyone in 6 months, construct something within yourself that cannot be taken away. A skill, a capability, a competence that accumulates. Because discipline constructs structure, but skill constructs leverage. And leverage transforms lives. Chapter 8. Raise your standards until you are unrecognizable. If you have followed everything to this point, something has already begun to shift. Your concentration is sharper. Your time is structured. Your body is stronger. Your mind is clearer. Your emotions are steadier. Your skill is advancing. But there is one final dimension that determines whether all of this becomes temporary progress or permanent transformation. Your standards. Standards determine destiny, not objectives, not motivation, not potential. Standards. What you tolerate defines what you become. If you tolerate inconsistency, you become inconsistent. If you tolerate laziness, you become average. If you tolerate excuses, you become predictable. But if you genuinely elevate your standards, your life begins to reorganize around them. Most people establish objectives. Very few establish standards. An objective states, "I want to become physically stronger." A standard states, "I train 4 times each week, regardless of circumstances." An objective states, "I want greater income." A standard states, "I develop valuable skills daily." An objective is temporary. A standard is identity. If you want to astonish everyone in 6 months, cease pursuing objectives. Elevate your standards. Begin with small, non-negotiable commitments. You do not skip training sessions. You do not break concentration blocks. You do not abandon commitments mid-cycle. You do not respond emotionally under pressure. No drama, no declarations, just standards. Quiet, consistent, unannounced standards that compound across 180 days into an identity that surprises even you. Initially, it will feel demanding. You will experience resistance, because elevating standards requires releasing your previous identity. And the previous identity will resist. It will communicate, "You deserve rest." It is not that significant. Everyone else does it. That voice is comfort. Comfort preserves average. Standards generate growth. When you elevate your standards, you also transform your environment. Examine your immediate circle honestly. What conversations dominate? What patterns are normalized? What behaviors are accepted without question? If your environment rewards distraction, you will struggle to maintain focus. If your environment rewards mediocrity, excellence will feel isolating. Elevating standards sometimes demands distance. Not resentment, not arrogance. Distance. Distance from patterns that diminish you. Distance from conversations that contract ambition. Distance from environments that celebrate stagnation. Because standards are shaped by exposure. If you perpetually observe average behavior, average becomes acceptable. If you perpetually observe excellence, excellence becomes normal. This is not about judging others. It is about protecting your trajectory. 6 months of elevated standards can transform how people experience you. You cease entertaining excuses. You cease engaging with mediocrity. You cease negotiating with weakness. You become composed, firm, and purposeful. People sense that transition, not because you announce it, but because you embody it. There is also a subtle but profound shift that occurs when you elevate your standards. You become less available for what does not serve your growth. Less available for drama. Less available for time-consuming distractions. Not because you consider yourself superior, because you are concentrated. Concentration filters priorities. And when your priorities are clear, distractions lose their influence. Consider the version of yourself 6 months from now. Stronger body, sharpened expertise, governed emotions, structured days. Now inquire, would that version tolerate your current excuses? Probably not. So operate from that version now. Standards are not future decisions. They are present behaviors. If you hold yourself to a standard of discipline, you behave differently today. If you hold yourself to a standard of excellence, you prepare differently today. If you hold yourself to a standard of composure, you respond differently today. Elevating standards is initially uncomfortable because it eliminates negotiation. It removes the option to abandon easily. It removes emotional justification. But that discomfort becomes familiar. And once it becomes familiar, growth accelerates. Another significant transition. Cease seeking external recognition for internal development. When your standards rise, you do not require applause. You do not require people to observe. You do not require validation. Because your fulfillment emerges from alignment. Alignment between what you declare and what you do. That alignment develops quiet confidence. And quiet confidence astonishes people more profoundly than loud ambition ever will. When you enter a space with greater composure, when you communicate with greater precision, when you respond deliberately and with greater depth, when your physique reflects discipline, when your expertise reflects sustained effort, people take notice. They may not fully comprehend it, but they sense it, because consistency radiates. And elevated standards generate consistency. 6 months is sufficient time to become unrecognizable. Not dramatically, not theatrically, subtly, powerfully. You do not need to transform everything. You need to cease tolerating what diminishes you. Cease tolerating disrupted routines. Cease tolerating reactive emotional responses. Cease tolerating shallow effort. Cease tolerating unfinished work. Replace tolerance with discipline. Replace negotiation with structure. Replace comfort with controlled challenge. And remain there. While others drift, you stabilize. While others react, you respond. While others complain, you execute. That stability astonishes people, because stability is rare. Most people inhabit cycles of excitement and collapse. If you inhabit consistency and composure, you stand apart automatically, not because you are more prominent, but because you are steadier. And here is the dimension most people never discuss. When you elevate your standards, there will be moments of solitude. Not because you are superior to anyone, but because growth reshapes alignment. Some conversations will no longer capture your interest. Some habits will no longer hold appeal. Some environments will feel more constrained than they once did. That is not loss. That is elevation. When your standards ascend, your tolerance descends. You no longer accept partial effort from yourself. You no longer justify poor discipline. You no longer romanticize comfort. And the world responds differently to someone who moves with genuine intention. People challenge you less. They honor your time more. They sense boundaries without requiring you to announce them, because standards communicate silently. You do not need to assert your value. You demonstrate it. 6 months of elevated standards will not simply alter your appearance or your circumstances. It will transform how you carry yourself, how you decide, how you respond, how you enter a space. And that composed, steady, undeniable presence is what genuinely astonishes everyone. Not noise, not excitement, consistency. 6 months. That is what we have been exploring throughout this entire audiobook. Not 10 years, not a lifetime, not some distant, unrealistic transformation. 6 concentrated months. And now the question is uncomplicated. What are you going to do with them? Because time will pass regardless. 6 months from today, the calendar will advance whether you evolve or not. The distinction is not time. The distinction is intention. Over this past hour, we examined the complete structure. You withdraw from distraction. You reclaim your 180 days. You fortify your body. You elevate your mind. You complete what you initiate. You govern your emotions. You construct a rare skill. You raise your standards. Not randomly, not emotionally, systematically. This is not motivation. It is architecture. Most people attempt to transform their lives through emotion. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel prepared. But confidence is constructed through repetition. Clarity is constructed through structure. Power is constructed through consistency. If you commit to 6 months of disciplined focus, something subtle begins to occur. You cease requiring approval. You cease announcing objectives. You cease explaining your direction, because you are too occupied constructing. And the longer you build in silence, the stronger you become. At first, nobody will observe. That is entirely normal. In the first month, advancement feels invisible. In the second month, it feels gradual. In the third month, you begin sensing a difference internally. By the fourth month, disciplines feel natural. By the fifth month, others begin perceiving a shift. By the sixth month, the distinction becomes undeniable. Not because you proclaimed it, but because you persisted. Persisting is rare. Most people abandon in the middle. They become distracted. They become emotional. They become impatient. But you understand the structure now. You comprehend that transformation is not dramatic. It is disciplined. You understand that attention is precious, that time is leverage, that physical strength develops mental certainty, that emotional regulation develops presence, that skill develops opportunity, that standards develop identity. 6 months from now, you could still be explaining why things have not progressed. Or you could be unrecognizable. Stronger posture, sharper thinking, composed reactions, elevated competence, deeper self-respect. And here is the most significant realization. You will not merely astonish everyone around you. You will astonish yourself. Because you will discover something profound. You were never genuinely stuck. You were scattered. You were never truly incapable. You were inconsistent. You were never actually without opportunity. You were unfocused. Focus addresses more limitations than talent ever could. Discipline unlocks more potential than motivation ever will. If you carry one principle from this audiobook, let it be this: protect your energy, protect your time, protect your standards, and apply them daily. Not flawlessly, but consistently. You do not need to reconstruct your entire existence tomorrow. Commence with the next 72 hours. Day 1. Eliminate one significant distraction. Day 2. Complete one deep concentration block. Day 3. Train your body with genuine intention. Establish momentum immediately, then repeat. No declarations, no dramatic announcements, just quiet execution. Allow people to wonder. Allow them to question. Allow them to underestimate. While they observe, you construct. While they discuss, you develop. While they scroll, you strengthen. And when 6 months have passed, the evidence will communicate on your behalf. You will move differently. You will think differently. You will decide differently. And that difference will be felt by everyone who encounters you. Not because you demanded recognition, but because you genuinely earned it. Remember this: transformation is not about becoming someone entirely different. It is about removing what diminishes you, removing distraction, removing inconsistency, removing emotional instability, removing insufficient standards. What remains is strength. What remains is clarity. What remains is discipline. And discipline is compelling. Discipline is powerful. Discipline is rare. 6 months. That is the window. Each day within it carries weight. Each choice accumulates. Each hour of genuine focus compounds. And the person you become across those 180 days is not a product of chance or circumstance. It is a product of the standards you held when it was difficult, the focus you maintained when it was tedious, and the quiet commitment you kept when no one was watching. At Elite Success Audiobooks, we believe that the most powerful version of you is not somewhere in the distant future. It is accessible through 6 months of intentional, disciplined, consistent action. We have walked through every principle together. Now the pathway is yours. And when you look back half a year from now, reflecting on how this began, on the moment you pressed play and chose to receive this, there is a meaningful possibility that you will recognize it as a turning point, a genuine beginning, not because anything was guaranteed to you, but because you chose to begin. And beginnings, when followed by consistent action, have a way of producing outcomes that exceed what we originally believed was possible. Withdraw, construct, return stronger. And, should you choose to, leave the number 999 in the comments below. In the field of quantum awareness and the numerology of cycles, 999 signifies the completion of one phase and the opening of an entirely new one. It is associated with the closing of an old chapter and the deliberate step into what comes next. If you sense something closing today, an old version of yourself, an old pattern, an old way of operating, and something new beginning in its place, let 999 mark that threshold. Leave it below. Let this community witness the moment you stepped forward. At Elite Success Audiobooks, we are grateful you chose to invest this time in yourself. That choice already reflects something about who you are becoming. The next 6 months belong to you. There is a version of you that already exists, not in the future, not in some distant, idealized place that requires years of waiting and perfect circumstances to reach. That version exists right now, as a potential, as a blueprint, as a quiet pressure you have been feeling for longer than you can remember. And the only thing separating you from that version is not talent. It is not luck. It is not the right moment or the right connection or the right opportunity arriving at your door. It is a decision, a single, clear, unambiguous decision to stop waiting and begin building. You have heard the structure. You understand the principles. 8 chapters, 8 dimensions of focused self-investment. But understanding is not the same as becoming. And this final chapter exists for one reason: to bridge the gap between the person who absorbed these ideas and the person who actually lives them. Because that bridge is built not with more information, but with something rarer and more powerful than information. It is built with belief. Specifically, with the belief that you are worth the effort. Not the effort of appearing successful, not the effort of impressing the people around you, the effort of becoming someone you actually respect when you are alone, when no one is watching, when the validation has run out and the only thing left is the question: did I give this everything I had? That is the question 6 months of genuine focus will answer for you. And the answer, when you have lived it, changes everything. Most people will never take a 6-month period of their life and dedicate it with genuine intention to their own growth. Not because they lack the desire, not because the concept is too difficult to understand, but because they are afraid. Afraid of investing and not seeing results. Afraid of changing and losing who they were. Afraid of committing to something and discovering halfway through that they are not capable. But here is what that fear does not account for. The person who begins 6 months of focused, disciplined investment is not the same person who finishes it. The act of beginning changes you. The act of persisting changes you further. And the act of completing what you committed to changes you in a way that nothing else can replicate. You do not need to be certain of the outcome before you begin. You only need to be willing to find out. And willingness, the quiet, steady willingness to show up for yourself without guarantee, is itself a form of strength that most people never develop. They want assurance before effort. They want proof before investment. They want to see the destination before they take the first step. But transformation does not work that way. It never has. The path reveals itself to the person who is already walking, not to the person who is still standing at the trailhead, waiting for conditions to be perfect. Conditions will never be perfect. Your schedule will always be complicated. Your energy will not always be high. There will always be a reason to delay, a justification to wait, a voice that says, "Start next week, next month, next year." That voice has cost you more than you know. Not because it is malicious, but because it sounds so reasonable. It speaks in the language of caution, and you have been listening to it for too long. 6 months from now, that voice will still be there. The question is whether you will have spent 6 months obeying it or 6 months proving it wrong. Let us talk about what happens inside a person who commits to this process. Not the visible results. Those are real and they will come. But the internal shifts, the ones that happen quietly, beneath the surface, long before anyone else notices anything has changed. In the first few weeks, there is resistance. Your habits push back. Your patterns assert themselves. The familiar gravitational pull of your old routines is strong, and every morning that you choose differently, you are working against months or years of accumulated momentum in the opposite direction. This is not weakness. This is physics. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. You are redirecting motion. It takes force. But here is what most people do not realize about that early resistance. It is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are doing something real. If there were no resistance, nothing significant would be changing. The discomfort you feel in the early weeks is the sensation of growth beginning. It is your nervous system adapting to new demands. It is your identity beginning the slow, necessary process of updating itself. By the end of the first month, something subtle shifts. You begin to sense that the resistance is slightly less than it was. Not gone, but lighter. Your mornings are fractionally easier. Your concentration blocks are fractionally longer before the pull of distraction returns. Your body is beginning to adapt to the physical demands you have placed upon it. Your mind is beginning to accept the new inputs you are feeding it. You will not feel transformed at the end of month 1. You will feel like someone who is trying, but trying consistently without breaking the streak, without abandoning the commitment, without reverting to old patterns, is precisely what month 1 requires. Month 1 is not about results. Month 1 is about establishing evidence. Evidence that you are serious. Evidence that this time is different. Evidence that you can maintain a commitment beyond the initial wave of motivation. Month 2 is where most people quit. The early excitement has faded. The results are not yet visible enough to sustain motivation on their own. The process has become repetitive, and repetition without visible reward tests patience in a way that excitement never did. Month 2 is the month that separates the people who are genuinely committed from the people who are enthusiastically interested. If you are in month 2 right now, or if you have quit in month 2 before, understand this. Month 2 is not a sign that you chose the wrong path. Month 2 is the price of admission to everything that comes after it. Every person who has ever built something real paid the price of month 2. They stayed when they did not feel like it. They showed up when nothing seemed to be working. They trusted the process when the process gave them nothing visible to trust. That trust, that willingness to continue investing without immediate return, is the rarest form of discipline, and it is available to you right now. Month 3 is when something genuinely changes. Not dramatically, but internally. You begin to feel different. Not just different from who you were at the start of the 6 months, different from who you were last week. There is a quiet momentum that has been building beneath the surface, and in month 3, you begin to feel it operating. Your body is stronger, and you can feel that strength in how you carry yourself, in how you breathe, in how you recover from difficulty. Your mind is sharper, and you can sense it in how your decisions feel more grounded, in how your reactions slow slightly before becoming responses. Your skill is developing, and you can observe it in how the work that was frustrating 3 months ago now feels manageable, even natural. Month 3 is when belief begins to shift from hope to evidence, and evidence is what you needed all along. By month 4, the disciplines have begun to feel less like disciplines and more like identity. You do not motivate yourself to train. You train because that is what you do. You do not convince yourself to focus. You protect your focus because that protection is now part of how you operate. The habits are not yet completely automatic, but they are no longer a constant battle. They have become something closer to defaults. And defaults, once established, compound without requiring constant energy to maintain. Month 5 is when the external world begins to notice. Not because you have announced anything, not because you have changed your presentation or curated a new image, but because something about you is simply different. And difference, when it is authentic and earned, is visible. People who interact with you regularly begin to sense a shift in your presence, in how you speak, in how you listen, in how you carry yourself under pressure. They may not be able to articulate it precisely. They may simply say that you seem different, more settled, more deliberate, more at ease with yourself. That observation is not small. That observation is the external confirmation of an internal transformation that has been underway for 5 months, and it will continue to deepen. Month 6 is where the full picture begins to emerge. You are not the same person who began this process. The gap between who you were and who you have become is now wide enough to be unmistakable to you, and increasingly unmistakable to those around you. Your body is evidence. Your skill level is evidence. Your emotional responses are evidence. Your daily structure is evidence. Your completion rate is evidence. Not evidence of luck, not evidence of circumstance, evidence of a choice you made and a commitment you honored across 180 days. That evidence belongs to you. No one can take it from you, and it will serve as the foundation for everything you build next. Now let us talk about something that does not get discussed enough in conversations about transformation. And that is the relationship you are building, not with external results, but with yourself. Every morning you choose your focus over distraction. You are sending yourself a message. That message says, you matter. Your growth matters. Your future matters enough to protect it today. Every training session you complete when you do not feel like it, every chapter you read when scrolling feels more appealing, every emotional response you pause before acting on, each of these is a form of self-communication. A quiet but powerful statement that you are worth the effort of discipline. Most people have never received that message from themselves consistently. They have received it in bursts, during periods of high motivation or following powerful experiences. But sustained, daily, repetitive self-investment, the kind that does not require inspiration to initiate, is something most people have never given themselves long enough to feel. And when you do feel it, when you have been showing up for yourself for 60, 90, 120 consecutive days, something profound happens to the way you experience yourself. The self-doubt that used to accompany major decisions begins to quiet. Not because all uncertainty disappears, but because you now have a body of evidence that tells you something about your own character. You know that when you commit, you follow through. You know that when it gets difficult, you remain. You know that when results are slow, you continue investing anyway. That knowledge, earned through months of consistent action, is worth more than any external achievement it may produce. It changes how you make decisions. When a new opportunity arises, you evaluate it not just by its potential upside, but by whether you are genuinely prepared to commit to it. And the word commit carries a different weight now than it used to, because you know what commitment actually requires, and you know that you are capable of providing it. It changes how you experience setbacks. When something does not go as planned, and within 6 months, something always will not go as planned, you do not interpret it as evidence that you are wrong to try. You interpret it as information, as a signal that requires adjustment, because you have already proved to yourself that you can adjust and continue. Setbacks are no longer catastrophic. They are data. It changes how you relate to time. 6 months used to feel like a long time, a period so distant that its end was almost abstract. Now you have experienced what 6 months actually contains. You know how many mornings are in it, how many training sessions, How many concentration blocks? How many moments of choosing the harder option? And you know that all of those moments, accumulated, produce something real. Time is no longer something that passes around you while you wait for circumstances to improve. Time is a material you work with, and you have learned how to use it. There is one more thing worth saying, something for the person who is listening to this and thinking quietly that perhaps this does not apply to them. Perhaps their situation is too specific, their constraints too significant, their starting point too far from where they would need to be. Perhaps 6 months of this kind of focus is something for people whose lives have fewer complications, fewer responsibilities, fewer obstacles between intention and execution. To that person, this is what matters most. The principles in this audiobook are not designed for ideal circumstances. They are designed for real ones, for schedules that are already full, for energy that is sometimes depleted before the day has fully begun, for situations where 2 hours of uninterrupted focus is not guaranteed, but where 2 hours of protected, intentional effort is still possible if you choose to create it. Transformation has never required a perfect starting point. It has never required optimal conditions or an absence of difficulty. Every person who has ever built something meaningful in their life did so not despite their circumstances, but through them. The constraints you are facing are not evidence that now is the wrong time. They may, in fact, be precisely what makes this the right time. Because discipline built in difficulty is more durable than discipline built in ease. The focus you cultivate when your schedule is complicated is stronger than the focus you would cultivate if everything were perfectly arranged. The resilience you develop when motivation is low is deeper than the resilience that only appears when conditions are favorable. You do not need a better starting point. You need to begin from the one you have, and you need to trust, even without proof, especially without proof, that beginning is sufficient. That showing up with whatever you have today is enough to start the momentum that will carry you through the months ahead. 6 months, 180 days, one direction, one decision at a time. The version of yourself that exists at the end of that process is not determined by your starting conditions. It is determined by the daily choices you make between now and then. By how many mornings you choose your growth over your comfort. By how many evenings you invest your remaining energy in something that compounds rather than something that consumes. By how many moments of difficulty you meet with discipline rather than retreat. That is the only thing standing between you and the version of yourself you have been sensing for years. The one you keep returning to in your quieter moments. The one that feels like the truest expression of what you are capable of becoming. Not someday, not when everything is ready. Now, with this day, with these hours, with the decision you make the moment this audiobook ends. Withdraw, build, return stronger. The 6 months begin the moment you choose them. And the moment you choose them, quietly, without announcement, without audience, you have already begun to become someone different. At Elite Success Audiobooks, we will be here every step of the way. The journey is yours. The discipline is yours. And so is everything it builds. Leave the number 528 below if this final chapter reached something in you. If you felt, even briefly, that you are ready to stop waiting and begin. In the study of quantum frequencies, 528 is associated with transformation, with repair, with the frequency at which change at the deepest level begins to take root. If you felt that frequency today, leave 528. Let this community mark the moment with you. Think about the people throughout history and throughout your own life who have made the kind of transformation that felt almost impossible to believe until you saw it with your own eyes. They were not people who had more time. They were not people who had fewer responsibilities or simpler circumstances. In many cases, they were people whose obstacles were more significant than yours. What they had was not a better situation. What they had was a different relationship with discomfort. They had learned, often through trial and through failure, that the feeling of difficulty is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that something real is happening, that growth is occurring, that the process is working exactly as it should, that relearning is available to you right now, not after you finish the audiobook, not after you have organized your schedule perfectly or cleared enough space in your life to feel ready. Right now, in this moment, you have the capacity to begin relating to difficulty differently, to begin treating the resistance you feel not as an obstacle to your progress, but as evidence of it. Because here is the truth about growth that most motivational content avoids discussing. Growth is not pleasant while it is happening. It is not a warm, inspiring experience that leaves you feeling energized and certain. Growth often feels like confusion. It feels like effort that does not seem to be producing visible results. It feels like patience stretched past what feels comfortable. It feels like continuing when the evidence in favor of continuing is still thin. And yet the people who stay through that discomfort, who keep showing up in spite of the uncertainty, in spite of the slow pace, in spite of the absence of external validation, those are the people who arrive somewhere genuinely different 6 months later, not because they were built differently, because they chose differently. Every day, even the days when the choosing was hard. You have that same capacity. Every human being does. The question is simply whether you will access it. Let us talk about identity one more time, because identity is the mechanism through which everything in this audiobook either sticks permanently or eventually fades. Every behavior you engage in consistently sends a signal to your brain about who you are. When you train 4 times a week consistently across months, your brain begins to update its model of you. You are no longer someone who is trying to get in shape. You are someone who trains. When you read daily, consistently across months, you are no longer someone who wants to be more knowledgeable. You are someone who reads. When you protect your concentration blocks consistently across months, you are no longer someone who is working on their focus. You are someone who is focused. These identity updates happen slowly. They happen quietly. They happen through repetition rather than through declaration. And they are far more durable than any goal you have ever written in a journal or announced to the people around you, because they are grounded in actual behavior rather than in aspiration. This is why completion matters so much more than intensity. An intense week of effort does not update your identity. It demonstrates that you are capable of intensity when motivated. But 6 months of consistent, moderate, unbroken effort tells your brain something entirely different. It tells your brain that this is who you are now. That these behaviors are not a phase or a challenge or a program. They are simply how you live. And once your brain accepts that update, once the new identity becomes the default rather than the aspiration, maintaining the behaviors requires a fraction of the effort it once did. You are no longer swimming against the current of your own self-perception. You are being carried by it. That is why the 6 months feel so different in month 6 than they did in month 1. Not because the behaviors have changed significantly, but because your relationship to those behaviors has changed entirely. What required discipline in month 1 has become, by month 6, simply how you operate. And what you could once only sustain through sheer willpower, you can now maintain almost effortlessly, because it has become an expression of identity rather than an act of discipline. This is the real payoff of 6 months of focused effort. Not just the visible results, the stronger body, the developed skill, the elevated mindset, the raised standards, but the identity that makes those results possible to maintain, to build upon, and to extend into every new challenge you face going forward. Because the person you become across these 6 months does not disappear at the end of them. That person continues. That identity continues. That level of expectation you now hold for yourself continues. And the next 6 months, built on the foundation of these, produce results that compound in ways that are genuinely difficult to predict from where you are standing today. There are people in your life who will watch you change over these 6 months and not understand what is happening. They will see that you are less available, that you are more selective about how you spend your time and with whom, that you seem quieter, not withdrawn, but less eager to fill silence with noise, that you seem calmer, not passive, but less reactive, less easily pulled into drama or conflict, that you are doing things they did not expect from you, waking earlier, training consistently, learning something new, building something they cannot yet see the shape of. Some of them will be curious. Some will be quietly inspired. Some will feel uncomfortable because the changes in you inevitably hold up a mirror to the areas in their own lives where they have been settling. And some will try, in small ways, to pull you back to the version of you they are more comfortable with, because that version asked nothing of them and confirmed that the level they were operating at was acceptable. None of this is personal. It is simply what happens when one person in a group begins to grow at a different rate. The dynamics shift. The equilibrium changes, and not everyone responds to that change with grace. But here is what matters. Their response is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is singular, to continue. To keep showing up for the process regardless of whether it is understood or celebrated by the people around you. To remember that the transformation you are building is not for their approval. It is for your own. And approval from yourself, genuine, evidence-based, earned approval, is the only kind that produces lasting confidence. When you move through these 6 months without explaining yourself, without seeking validation, without needing anyone around you to understand or endorse what you are doing, something powerful happens to your relationship with your own judgment. You begin to trust it. Not blindly, not arrogantly, but with the quiet confidence of someone who has proved, repeatedly, that their own assessment of what is worth doing can be relied upon. That trust in your own judgment, in your own process, in your own capacity to evaluate and pursue what genuinely serves your growth, is among the most valuable things these 6 months will produce. And it will inform every decision you make for the rest of your life. 6 months from now, exactly 6 months from the day you begin, do this one thing. Find a quiet place. Sit without distraction, and ask yourself honestly, who was I 6 months ago, and who am I today? Not in terms of achievements or accomplishments, though those will be real and worth acknowledging, but in terms of character, in terms of how you face difficulty, in terms of what you now expect of yourself, in terms of how you spend your hours and what you have decided your time is worth. Ask yourself whether the person you have become is someone you respect. Whether the choices you have made across 180 days have produced something you are proud of. Not proud in the sense of wanting recognition, but proud in the private, honest sense of knowing that you gave this the effort it deserved. If the answer is yes, and after 6 months of genuine, disciplined investment, it almost certainly will be, then let that answer be the foundation for your next 6 months. Because transformation is not a destination, it is a direction. And once you have learned how to move in that direction, once you have built the habits, the identity, the standards, and the self-trust that these 6 months develop, continuing forward becomes not just possible, but natural. You will not need to be convinced again. You will not need another audiobook or another source of external motivation to maintain what you have built. Because by then, what you have built will be self-sustaining. It will be you. And that is precisely what 6 months of focused, intentional, disciplined growth produces. Not just a stronger body, or a higher skill level, or a better daily structure, though all of those are real and significant. It produces a person who knows what they are capable of. A person who has closed the gap, at least partially, between who they were and who they were always meant to become. A person who no longer needs to wonder whether transformation is possible for them, because they have already experienced it. That person is not a distant aspiration. They are the natural result of 180 days of choosing growth over comfort, consistency over intensity, and quiet construction over visible performance. They are who you are becoming right now, with every choice, with every session, with every morning you show up before the world has had a chance to tell you who to be. At Elite Success Audiobooks, this is what we believe in most deeply. Not in dramatic reinvention or in the promise of effortless results, but in the quiet, compounding, irreversible power of a human being who decides to take themselves seriously. For 6 months, one day at a time, one choice at a time. That decision belongs to you. The 6 months are yours, and so is everything they build. Before this chapter closes, there is one final image worth carrying with you. Imagine 2 versions of yourself standing at the same starting point. Same circumstances, same schedule, same constraints, same doubts, same history. Everything identical. The only difference is this. One of them decides, quietly and without announcement, to begin. To protect 2 hours each morning before the world demands anything. To train when they do not feel like it. To study when distraction is louder than intention. To finish what they start, even when the middle is tedious. To govern their reactions even when emotion is strong. To build one skill with focused daily repetition. To raise their standards even when lowering them would be so much easier. The other version waits, not because they do not want to change, they want it deeply, but they wait for a better moment, a clearer sign, a higher energy level, a less complicated week, a stronger sense of certainty that the effort will pay off before they are willing to invest it. 6 months pass for both of them. The calendar moves at the same rate for both. Time does not favor one over the other. But at the end of those 6 months, they are no longer the same person standing at the same point. The gap between them is not dramatic in any single dimension, but across every dimension simultaneously, the distance is unmistakable. In how they carry themselves, in how they respond to pressure, in how their body moves and what their mind produces, in how they are perceived by the people around them, and, far more importantly, in how they perceive themselves. One of them has 6 months of evidence that they are someone who builds. The other has 6 months of evidence that they are someone who waits. Both forms of evidence compound. Both shape the next 6 months, and the 6 months after that, and the years that follow. The version of yourself you become in the next 6 months is not locked in. It is not determined by your past or by your current circumstances or by how many times you have tried and stopped before. It is determined by one thing and one thing only: the decision you make today, and the decision you make tomorrow, and the decision you make on the morning of day 47 when motivation is low and the process feels thankless, and the most comfortable option is to simply not. On that morning, and on every morning like it, remember this: you are not building towards some distant version of yourself. You are building that version right now, in that moment, by making that choice. Show up, train, study, focus, finish, govern yourself, build, raise your standards, not for anyone watching, for the version of yourself that deserves to exist. 6 months. The window is open. Walk through it. And when the 6 months are complete, when you look back at who you were on the day you began, you will understand something that cannot be fully communicated in words before you have lived it. That the effort was not just worth it, that the effort was the point. That the discipline, the consistency, the quiet showing up day after day, that was not merely the means to an end. That was the transformation itself. Every morning you chose growth was a morning you became someone more worth becoming. And that person is yours to keep, permanently, irreversibly. Yours.